As the name suggests, this subreddit serves as an archive of people who met their end in some of the most brutal ways imaginable. Suicide, murder, dismemberment, freak accidents, animal attacks. If you can picture it, chances are it's been posted here. With over 67,000 active members, its description reads, "This sub features videos, pics, albums, and articles that explain in detail how people have lost their lives, or come terrifyingly close to it." As I mentioned earlier, this subreddit is filled to the brim with more gore and chaos than most people could stomach. If you're thinking of diving into it yourself, be warned, this is not a place for the faint of heart. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. The first post I came across was titled simply, "Stoned in Nigeria." The picture shows a man lying face down in what appears to be the middle of the road. He's surrounded by massive, broken fragments of concrete, each one likely used as a weapon. His pants are pulled down and his face has clearly been bludgeoned beyond recognition. According to the post, this man was stoned to death for allegedly causing a motorcycle crash that killed 4 people and left 6 others injured. It's a deeply jarring image, not just because of the brutality, but because of what it reveals about how different parts of the world administer justice. One moment, one mistake, and the next a street execution. It's a chilling reminder of how fast lives can be lost, and how a single decision can trigger a chain of senseless tragedy. The next post was stark, just a single chilling line. Per Olin, known as the vocalist of Mayhem, dead in his room on April 8, 1991. The image attached is unforgettable. He's lying lifeless on what looks like a bed or a couch. His pale body soaked in blood. The upholstery beneath him is stained deep crimson. Beside him, a large kitchen knife and what appears to be a shotgun. If you're not familiar, Per Olin, better known by his haunting stage name, Dead, was the vocalist and lyricist for the infamous Norwegian black metal band, Mayhem. Born on January 16, 1969, he joined the band in 1988, and quickly became known for his morbid persona, obsession with death, and unrelenting darkness, not just in his lyrics, but in his actual life. On April 8, 1991, at just 22 years old, Olin would take his own life in his room. But this wasn't a quiet departure. According to reports, he first used a hunting knife to carve deep, fatal wounds into his own wrists and throat, and then used a shotgun to end what was left. When one of his bandmates arrived at his house, he didn't call for help. He didn't even call the police. He first went to the store and bought a disposable camera. The picture he took of his friend's brutalized body would later leak. One in particular, graphic and raw, was used as the cover for a Mayhem bootleg album called Dawn of the Black Hearts. And yes, the photo that you're seeing right now was made into an album cover, and it's one of the most infamous and disturbing images in music history. Not just for the sheer gore, but for the callousness. The commodification of a real person's final moment. Olin wasn't just a shock rocker with a gimmick. He was a troubled young man who lived with what he sang about, and in the end, that obsession consumed him. The line between art and horror blurred and eventually vanished. The next post was titled, "Killed by a Sloth Bear in India." Just reading the title feels surreal, but the image attached is shockingly very real. A sloth bear, one of the most aggressive and unpredictable bear species, had escaped from its enclosure at a local zoo in India. In a horrifying turn of events, the animal attacked a zoo visitor with feral intensity. The post shows the aftermath, the victim's body torn apart, the bear refusing to leave his side. Blood stains the earth around them like a scene from a nightmare. It wasn't just an attack, it was a consumption. The bear had begun feeding. The animal even stood guard over the corpse until zoo staff and forest rangers arrived, managing to subdue it with tranquilizers, but the damage was already done. The man was dead, mutilated beyond recognition. In the comments section, the aftermath unfolded in another way. Argument. Some users were enraged to learn the bear was later euthanized, furious that a creature acting on instinct would be killed for human failure. Others defended the decision, pointing out the very real danger the bear now posed. And then there were those who turned the anger toward the zoo itself, outraged that such a powerful wild animal had been kept in cramped, inadequate conditions to begin with. Outraged that such a powerful wild animal had been kept in cramped, inadequate conditions to begin with. The truth is brutal. Nature doesn't conform to cages, and when it breaks free, there is no reasoning with it. The next post is almost too surreal to process. It's titled, "What's Left of a Man After an Explosive Decompression." It shows what the title promises, what remains of a human body after one of the most violent deaths imaginable. According to the post, the man was killed due to a catastrophic equipment error, one that granted him access to a pressurized room he should have never been able to enter. In an instant, the environment shifted from 9 atmospheres of pressure to just 1. The result, his body was sucked violently through the narrow crack of a door. What's left is barely recognizable. Flesh torn, limbs twisted, a human life reduced to a mangled collection of parts scattered across the chamber. And unfortunately, it didn't stop with him. Behind him were 4 teammates, all of whom suffered a similar fate, only slower. The rapid decompression caused their blood to boil, quite literally. One by one, they died as the pressure drop ravaged the bodies from the inside out. One by one, they died as the pressure ravaged the bodies from the inside out. This wasn't a war zone, and it wasn't even an act of violence. It was a workplace accident, a simple malfunction, a breach of safety protocol, and yet the result was as gruesome as anything you'd find on a battlefield. This post, like so many others, is a brutal reminder of how fragile we really are. How quickly an ordinary day can become a final moment, and how, beneath all our technology and ambition, we are still so vulnerable to the sheer, unforgiving power of physics. It's not just gore, it's not just tragedy, it's the terrifying reality that death doesn't discriminate. It just happens. A massive subreddit with over 1.1 million active members. On the surface, it's meant to be a support forum for those struggling within the confines of their own mind. But talk to users who have been active there for months or even years, and a different picture begins to form. Many claim the subreddit doesn't foster healing, it breeds negativity. Some even say that leaving the community was one of the best decisions they made for their own mental health. The subreddit describes itself as peer support for anyone struggling with a depressive disorder. And make no mistake, depression is a serious, often life-altering condition. Having a space to vent, to speak freely without judgment, can be incredibly important. But there's another side to that coin. Sometimes, when we sit too long in our own dark thoughts, especially surrounded by others who are equally lost in theirs, it can deepen the spiral instead of lifting us out of it. The first post that caught my eye was titled simply, "August 26th will be my last day." It read like a suicide note, and in many ways it was. A 21-year-old hardened by years of emotional trauma, an abusive father, financial ruin, and now grinding away at a soul-crushing job just to keep himself and his mother afloat. No joy, no future, just simply survival. He said he'd tried everything: medications, distractions, even clinging to the false hope of unreturned love. But none of it helped. He described a numbness that always returned, swallowing him whole. He wasn't posting for sympathy. He wasn't looking to be fixed. He just wanted someone to know who he was. He just wanted someone to know he was here, and that he tried. "I've chosen August 26th as my last day," he wrote. "Not for attention, just because I'm tired. Tired in a way I can't explain anymore." In an edit later, he thanked those who left kind, sincere messages. It hadn't changed his mind, but he said it meant something. That strangers had seen him, that even briefly, he had felt noticed. The second post hit just as hard. "I don't want to die, but I don't want to live." This user described a quiet kind of despair, not the loud crashing kind, just a suffocating sense of pointlessness. Getting out of bed, going to work, cleaning, showering, none of it seemed to matter. The cost of effort felt heavier than any reward life could possibly offer. He explained how, despite only being 25 and academically gifted, nothing seemed to bring fulfillment. No career, no friendships, no peace. Diagnosed with autism and social phobia, even basic tasks like buying groceries were overwhelming. The thought of working in an office was almost paralyzing. What made it worse was the awareness. He knew he had talents. He knew he was still young, but when you feel cursed by a need for connection, yet are unable to truly connect, the loneliness becomes unbearable. And the state of the world? Climate collapse? Economic instability? It was the final nail in the coffin of hope. He wasn't asking for cliches. He wasn't fishing for "it gets better." He was hoping somewhere out there, someone had been to this place and had found a way to crawl back. The next post chilled me for a different reason. "I'm a mom and I'm so done." This wasn't someone young and isolated. This was a mother doing her best to raise a 2-year-old child while living in a toxic environment. Separated from the child's father, stuck in a house with her own emotionally draining family and buried in financial stress. She was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. She felt unseen, taken for granted, and disrespected by the very people who were supposed to be helping her. Being a parent is hard enough, but being a parent while silently drowning in your own mental health crisis, that's a pain few understand. She wanted out, not because she didn't love her child, but because she was collapsing under the weight of everything else. And, worst of all, no one around her seemed to care. And then the final post. No desire to continue. This one didn't even sound like a cry for help. It just sounded empty. A young person, unemployed, a college dropout, no drive, no hope, and no belief in a future. Just drifting in a fog of therapy sessions, ineffective medications, and failed attempts at side hustles. He described himself as a parasite, not because he was, but because that's how depression lies to you, how it warps your self-image until you see nothing but failure. He said that if his parents ever gave up on him, that would be it. He wouldn't survive. It's easy, too easy for outsiders to say, just get help or try harder. But when you're in that deep, dark hole, it doesn't feel like there's a way out. Your body might still be moving, but your soul feels long gone. You stop seeing a future. You stop believing anyone else sees you at all. What these posts showed me, what this entire subreddit screams, is that millions of people are walking through life as ghosts, smiling through pain, numb behind their eyes, hoping someone, anyone, might notice before it's too late. If you're struggling, if any of this sounds even remotely familiar, please hear this. You're not a burden. You're not alone. And this pain you're feeling, it lies. It tells you you're stuck, that you're unworthy, but that is not the truth. Please, reach out. A friend, a therapist, a hotline, someone. You matter far more than you realize, and even if you don't see that right now, others will. You're here, and that means you still have a chance. So please, hold on. The next subreddit is a particularly difficult one to wrap your head around, and even harder to emotionally process. With over 164,000 active members, r/RegretfulParents is exactly what it sounds like. A raw, unfiltered look into the minds of men and women who regret becoming parents. Some of the posts come from young parents overwhelmed by the chaos of raising toddlers, burned out, sleep deprived, and just desperate for a break. Others are far more haunting. Confessions from parents of grown children who harbor deep resentment, even hatred, toward their own kids. And, by extension, the lives they feel were stolen from them. The subreddit's description reads, "This is a safe place for parents who think they shouldn't have become parents to rant, confess, and get things off their chest about their kids, partners, families, etc. No judgment or bullying is allowed. It's a space of brutal honesty and definitely not for the faint of heart." As I scrolled through the subreddit, several posts jumped out at me. The first one was titled simply, "I just want to run away." One of the most gut-wrenching posts I came across began with a brutal admission. "I regret having a child almost every day." The writer describes a life consumed by exhaustion, pain, and relentless stress. Their child has severe autism, and despite every therapy available, nothing ever seems to get better. Every day is chaos, plans ruined, tantrums erupting, and screaming that never stops. The child lashes out physically, the parent is burned out, fraying at the edges, afraid their body is going to give out completely. They confess they don't want to harm themselves, but they cry constantly, and sometimes dream of being admitted to a hospital, just for the peace, just for the silence. They end the post with a stark, desperate warning. Do not have kids. It isn't worth it. Another post was titled, "I hate being a father." This parent holds nothing back. His daughter, who is 2.5, and from the moment she was born, he's felt nothing but regret. He resents how every bit of his time has vanished, swallowed up by the endless labor of parenthood. There is no freedom, no rest, and no joy, just constant responsibility. He says the only thing keeping him from leaving is guilt, the memory of his own father walking out when he was only 3. But even then, that's a thin tether. He admits that if he did leave, he'd likely regret it too, once the dust settled and he caught his breath. He ends with a bleak observation. Parenthood is a nightmare if you're poor, exhausted, or mentally unwell. And sadly, he's all 3. Then there was the post titled, "Husband makes everything worse." This one came from a mother. She's doing it all alone. Although not technically, her husband is around, but emotionally, he's checked out. He stretches his work hours, fills his days with chores, anything to avoid spending time with the kids. He doesn't play with them, doesn't take them anywhere fun. He's great at the logistics, the cooking, the bills, but when it comes to bonding with his children, there's a chilling absence. She watches her friends' husbands light up at the thought of a weekend with their kids. Her husband never says anything like that, and Molly insists he loves his children. His actions, especially his habit of scheduling his busiest work weeks during school holidays, tells a very different story. Even on her best days, he drags her down, and she's tired of pretending that doesn't matter. This subreddit is unlike anything I've come across. It's heavy. It's painful. It's a brutally honest mirror held up to one of society's most sacred roles, parenthood. And as someone who isn't a parent, I can't pretend to fully grasp what these people are going through. But reading their words, it's not hard to feel the weight they carry. The grief, the rage, the profound loneliness that comes from admitting something you're never supposed to say out loud. I regret becoming a parent. r/regretfulparents is soaked in sadness, frustration, and suppressed rage. But more than anything, it's filled with people who are trying to survive. People who were promised joy and fulfillment, and instead found themselves trapped in a role they can't escape from. I can only hope that, in time, each of them finds a path through the darkness, that somehow they rise above the guilt and the regret, and reclaim a piece of the life they lost. A smaller subreddit with over 45,000 active members, r/DeadRedditors is a space dedicated to remembering Reddit users who have passed away. Some died from natural causes, others from illness, and heartbreakingly, some even from suicide or murder. The subreddit's description reads simply, "A place to remember those who came before us." As you scroll through the homepage, you're met with hundreds of posts, each one a digital tribute. Users remembering a dear friend, a beloved parent, a son, a daughter, a quiet, haunting catalog of the deceased. The first post that caught my eye was titled, "Feeling Method 419. Derek had died base jumping. Only weeks before his fatal leap, he'd post in r/skydiving, frustrated that he'd been banned from his local drop zone after pulling a reckless stunt. Experienced skydivers pleaded with him in the comments, trying to break through, but it was clear Derek wasn't listening. What most didn't know was that Derek had skipped a critical step. Instead of learning to skydive first, gaining the hours, the muscle memory, the respect for the danger, he dove headfirst into base jumping, arguably one of the most dangerous sports in existence. No second chances, no margin for error. According to the base facility list, Derek made his final jump from a low antenna, a structure littered with lines and barely any clear landing space. It wasn't just a risky jump, it was a death sentence for someone without the skills or experience. He sadly never stood a chance. Scrolling further, the next post stopped me in my tracks. It was titled Folsom Valley. This one wasn't about thrill-seeking or misjudged risks. It was about loss that feels like it punched a hole through the earth. Ali, an artist, a best friend, a beam of light. She had just moved into a beautiful new home with her partner, bubbling with plans, board game nights, garden parties, even helping design her friend's wedding dress. She was glowing, finally happy, the kind of happiness that feels like a reward after life's long struggle. And then, cancer. Leukemia stole her immunity. Isolation followed. Then the diagnosis worsened. Her spine, her nerves, her strength. Yet her friends still hoped. Even when the odds turned grim, they still hoped. Unfortunately, on December 10th, she lost the battle to leukemia. Her funeral was quiet, a sacred moment, a beautiful wicker casket, tears that wouldn't stop falling. A soul so close, now just a memory wrapped in silence. She had prayed to die the night before. She was simply too tired to fight anymore, and that detail crushed everyone who loved her. And pain lingers like a ghost. Certain songs can't be played, and a road sign nearby still hits like a knife to the chest. Her friends speak of her in present tense. They can't help it. It's not denial. It's simply devastation. Then came the next post, Monkey Voodoo. Ethan, known as Monkey, had battled addiction and depression for years. His go-to drink was a 50-50 mix of rum and coke, always in a double-walled cup so the ice wouldn't melt. He met his best friend online. Their bond began with pizza, Monkey offering to buy a stranger a meal simply because he trusted him. That trust grew into friendship, then something deeper. Monkey became a lifeline. He bought food, helped pay bills, encouraged sobriety, even bought his friend a gaming monitor as a reward for staying clean. But behind his generosity was a man falling apart. As his stepmother deteriorated and reality grew darker, Monkey slipped. His texts became blurry. The person checking his live location noticed his phone hadn't moved in over 14 hours. A friend asked the roommate to check. And then the call came. Ethan was found in the bathroom, gone. A fatal mix of alcohol and anxiety medication. An accidental fall, or maybe something worse. The specifics didn't matter as much as the silence he left behind. His friend, the one he helped save, now carries the weight of his memory and the pain of knowing that there was no saving Monkey from himself. And as I sat with these stories, 3 of them just pages apart, it hit me. r/DeadRedditors isn't just a subreddit. It's a digital cemetery, a sacred archive of heartbreak filled with usernames instead of headstones. Each post is a cry into the void, a plea for remembrance, a final attempt to make sure someone's story doesn't fade into the noise. It's devastating, but it's also beautiful, because in this strange little corner of the internet, the dead are remembered not by just their families, but by the community they once laughed with, argued with, and shared pieces of themselves with. It's a place where grief meets memory, and where the stories of people like Derek, Ali, and Ethan live on, one upvote at a time. And in the endless scroll, they're never forgotten. And somehow, that makes all the difference.